last night, immediately after the match, I took to social media and I said, that's what a steel cage match is supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to look like. That's what I remember a steel cage match being. Two men with a grudge being locked in a cage, fighting with their fists, kicking with their feet, doing wrestling moves, using the cage, and that's it. Two huge personalities, two men, two wrestlers, two characters, and a cage. And that's all you need. Because if you're over enough, that carries everything. I'm not a fan of people bringing things in the cage. Even when I was in cage matches, and we have a very memorable cage match against the Hardys, in which that's when the Dudleys won the WCW Tag Team Championships and became, started our trek into becoming most decorated. We brought a table into the ring that night. I was even against that, but we came up with a very creative way of getting around it. So whether it's been me or others, I'm very much against anything coming in that cage or any wonkiness. I want to see a good, old school, old-fashioned steel cage match. And the WWE did a great job of reminding us of what those looked like from back in the day. They showed us clips of Bruno and Ivan Koloff. Yep. They showed us clips of Superfly Jimmy Snuka and Magnificent Morocco, the match that we always talk about in '83 that we were all at. And if you remember those cage matches, what was it about? Two men fighting inside of a steel cage.
Yeah, and again, the story you tell. The story with Ivan Koloff and Bruno Sammartino. Ivan Koloff took Bruno Sammartino out. That was his opportunity to win the championship back, and Jimmy Snuka and Don Morocco for the Intercontinental Championship. And the story that they were able to tell, because, again, we always talk about people thought that Jimmy Snuka won that match. Morocco won. Morocco able to tell the referee to open the cage door. People don't seem to remember that. Jimmy Snuka gives him the headbutt, and he falls out of the cage and retains the Intercontinental Championship. But yeah, it's about telling a story. And Seth Rollins and CM Punk were able to do that last night. I loved how, Punk gave that curb stomp to Seth Rollins, 1-2 kick out. And usually that's where you see, oh my God, the shock and awe on somebody's face. It was frustration that you saw on CM Punk's face. You saw it in Seth Rollins' face. Seth Rollins calling Punk an asshole. Come on, bring it. Where both of them, both Punk and Seth, had the opportunity to win by stepping through that cage door, but each the other one saying, no. That can't be the way I win that match. Very unlike a cage match where it's usually about escaping the cage. That was about gaining a pinfall in the cage. Very different than usual cage matches that you see.
And I loved the psychology that was incorporated into the body of the match. Yes, the match can be won via pinfall, submission, or escaping the cage. And twice, each man had an opportunity to leave, but the other guy called him out, basically saying, that's the way you want to win.
Yeah, that's the weak man's way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the way you want. You can't pin me. You can't make me tap. You can't make me pass out. So you're going to walk out of the cage. Why? Because we created a little bit of distance between one another. Our rivalry goes beyond anybody walking out a door. Yeah, I know you can walk out that door and win, but do you really want to do it that way? So to see that psychology incorporated, the fact that just the larger than life characters that CM Punk and Seth Rollins are could carry that cage match. That's what it's supposed to be. That's why I capitalized the word "that's" in the tweet last night, because that's what it was back in the day. And we've gotten so far away from why guys get locked in a cage and what the cage is supposed to mean and how the cage is the gimmick. Okay? If you're going to have a tables match, you don't need ladders involved. If you're going to have a ladders match, you don't need tables involved. And if you're going to have a cage match, you don't need all of the accoutrement or toys. Okay? You don't need the toolbox. You don't need the this, the that, the other thing, and your sister's ass, although... it's always nice.
Depending. And the time of day and the day.
And I loved the finish because it leaves things so open-ended. We get the return of Roman Reigns, the OTC, no music, absolutely love it, drags Seth out of the cage. Seth wins in the way that neither man truly wanted to win. But, hey, listen, Seth's feet hit the ground. So Seth wins. Roman steals the victory from Punk. Heyman consoling Punk. Roman goes into the ring, destroys Punk. I mean, come on. The drama, the storytelling, the psychology, the drama, everything you need, and it's all being told by the wrestlers. Nothing additional, nothing necessary. And I can not only did I hear a certain fan base screaming last night on social media. Not only did I hear a certain fan base screaming this morning on social media, but I can hear that certain fan base screaming through their radios right now. Spoiler alert. I'm not talking about AEW. I'm not comparing last night's cage match to the cage match at Revolution. How many times have I complained about cage matches in general not sticking to what cage matches used to be?
And usually the WWE is the one that's guilty of it.
Correct a fucking mundo. I'm not comparing it to Fletcher and Ospreay.
And they had a tremendous match on Sunday. Not taking anything away from it. That's not the discussion right now.
In its own right, Fletcher and Ospreay had a great cage match. Is it my cup of tea by bringing all of the extra shit in there? Absolutely not. My cup of tea is what we saw last night. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what Fletcher and Ospreay did was bad, but I could tell you it was excellent. It was athletic. It was this. It was that. Those two guys tore it down. But I'm a traditionalist when it comes to certain matches. What I got last night is what I wanted to see. And what I got last night tells you how over you are. Because in a cage, there's only so much you can do. You have to wrestle. You have to fight. You have to trade punches. You have to trade chops. You have to trade kicks. You have to trade maneuvers. You have to beat the shit out of each other. Those two guys were blown early on because that pseudo hockey fight they had where they were just lighting each other up, they were breathing heavy. And I loved seeing that. I love seeing the exhaustion. I love seeing the struggle. I love seeing the frustration. That match gave me everything I could possibly want as a fan. Me, the fan.
And I love what you said about the wrestlers communicating to the audience. And they did it, as you always preach on the show, with their facial expressions. That whole story you told of Seth and Punk about you're not going through the cage door. You're going to have a real fight and you're going to beat me like a real competitor. They said that without having to say it. They said it in their facial expressions. But the biggest one was Roman Reigns. When we saw Paul Heyman helping CM Punk, when everything was said and done, and Roman Reigns' face when he saw Heyman in the ring consoling Punk, that's all you needed to know. You talk about getting ready for WrestleMania and this road to WrestleMania, getting you excited for what we're going to see in Las Vegas. If what you saw on Roman Reigns' face didn't get you excited for what we're going to see in Vegas, I don't know what will. Because that look, and I don't know what that look was, Bully. I don't know if it was anger, disappointment, frustration, or all three. It showed on his face.
When I looked at Roman, so when Roman turned around and he saw Heyman consoling Punk, that laugh, like he cocked his head back and he laughed, and it almost screamed to me like Roman was saying, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Exactly. That's what I got from it. So it looks like, as we spoke about weeks ago, it looks like we're gonna probably get Roman, Punk, and Seth in this three-way, where will at WrestleMania, where will Heyman's alliance be? Will it be with Punk? Will it be with Roman? What's the favor? We still got to remember, but I cannot fuck 5 stars. Okay? I'm Bubba Ray Dudley. I'm a 2-time Hall of Famer. Blah, 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 blah. I'm one of the boys. And as one of the boys, I'm telling those men involved, those 4 men involved, Seth, Punk, Roman, and Paul Heyman last night, you get 2 thumbs up from me. And 2 thumbs up from me means more than any fucking star rating that's out there.
Now, when you look at the crowd and the reaction from the crowd at the Garden last night, it seemed like the crowd was struggling between Seth Rollins and CM Punk. There were times that it felt like the crowd was behind Seth, and there were times that it felt like the crowd was behind Punk. But when Roman came out there, the Garden was behind Roman Reigns in that match last night.
They're getting an unadvertised return. It was a surprise. The no music. And it's Roman. Roman is the top of the food chain in the WWE when it comes to the men's division. So I'm not shocked. And I love the fact that there was no music. I am not a fan of music on run-ins. It's too contrived. But I know in the world of the WWE, that's how they make stars. Whenever I've done a run-in, I don't want music because it's a run-in. It's unscheduled. It's matter of fact. It just happens to happen because of what's going on in the ring. And last night we got that with Roman and the no music and what he did, the camera work, seeing him. It kind of reminded me of that movie, Drag Me to Hell, when you just see the girl at the end of the coming attractions just get dragged straight down into hell. The way Roman just dragged Seth out of that cage. It was planned perfectly. It was executed perfectly. It was shot perfectly. I don't know how else to put it over. The fan in me loved it. I was entertained by it. I was like wide-eyed at the end of the match. The professional in me, I wish I could shake everybody's hand. And as a matter of fact, I text Heyman when it was all said and done, and I said, bravo to all 4 of you. That was awesome.
And you talk about the production, you talk about the camera work. You're right. High praise for all that was involved in that because you heard the rumbling in the crowd. Like you saw Seth, you saw Punk, and then you heard this like rumble, and you didn't know what it was. And then like you said, you saw Seth get dragged out of the gate, but you didn't know what was going on, and then you see Roman. That was amazing. Big surprise. Shock for me, and then you see Paul Heyman, and then you know that Heyman and Punk have that relationship together. And that's going to be part of this story moving forward, Bully, is where is Heyman's allegiance going to lie? Is it going to be with Roman Reigns, or is it going to be with CM Punk? He showed both sides of that last night, and that's going to be the story moving forward, at least between Roman and Punk.
With everything you just said, the one word that stood out to me, shock. Months ago, we did a master's class on shock and awe. Can you still do shock and awe in pro wrestling? And at least my answer was absolutely. You just have to know what you're doing, and you have to have the right scenario and the right people involved. Last night, right scenario, right people involved. People were absolutely shocked to see the return of Roman. Last night was a special cage match to me.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I would like to see not only the WWE, but all professional wrestling companies try to do a better job at sticking to the stipulation of the match. You know, and I brought up like tables matches and ladders matches. Like so many times there's a ladder match, right? And then there's tables and chairs involved. Why? Why do you need a table and a chair if you're having a ladder match? The ladder is the gimmick. The ladder is the weapon. The ladder is the everything of the match. I'm going back to the steel cage. We grew up on cage matches that meant something. Now, did Punk and Seth have like the old school reason of why they needed to be locked in a cage because there was always outside interference or somebody was always running away. No. This was about two guys that had a tremendous amount of animosity for each other. We're going to keep that animosity as confined as possible.
But it's also completely different, Bully, because you have two baby faces involved. Like usually you have the heel that has outside interference or runs away where the babyface can't get his hands on him. This is a completely different story. Like I said, when have you ever seen a cage match where the door is wide open, where somebody can walk right out? Nah. And not because they wanted to inflict more pain. It was because that's the coward's way. You're turning your back on me and you're walking out of the cage. That can't be the way that you win this match. So this is a completely different dynamic. Have you ever seen two baby faces in a cage match before?
This is why these guys deserve even more credit for what they were able to do. Two baby faces in a cage match, both with the opportunity to win, coming back in and fighting. I mean, you've seen lots of cage matches. This was a traditional cage match, and the crowd sounded as lively as I was watching a Bruno cage match from back in the day.
Yeah, and usually I'm the person when it comes to a blood feud and you're having a cage match and it's a blow-off match, which this wasn't last night. You know, where's the blood? You're getting your head raked against the cage. But they didn't wrestle that type of match last night. It was more about the individual will of each competitor. It was very, very different than any cage match I had ever seen.
If you're going to run each other into the cage face first, if you're going to take the other guy's head and grate it up against the cage multiple times and there is no blood, then I have a problem with it. If you're using the cage as a weapon, completely different story. Throwing somebody into the cage, throwing somebody up and into the cage and having them take a huge back bump over the top rope backwards, stuff like that. Last night's psychology was spot on. And I know Heyman like the back of my hand. I don't know the other three guys as well. But knowing the pros that they are, knowing how confident and they are in their abilities, knowing that they know each other is over and they're going to bring out the best in one another, I can definitely have seen that earlier in the day, somebody throwing it out there, we're doing this old school.
Yeah.
We're doing it old school, and this is the way it's going to be, and it's going to work. And the reason why people feel the need to bring weapons into a cage is because they're working for a pop. They're chasing the hug on social media. But the most important reason why is because they don't have confidence in themselves and their character and their ability in that ring to carry the match. And they know that they don't have that confidence in their opponent. Or else you would never need to bring anything in that cage, as they did last night.
And everybody was over that was involved in that, including Paul Heyman. The other thing I got to point out, and it was very old school, is because that cage was hanging over the ring, I honestly don't remember, Bully, where it's like, I just want to see this cage match. Like, throughout the whole night, because you see that cage hanging from the ring, and we've complained about it with the WWE, especially, 5-6 years ago. They would have cage matches and they would be completely meaningless. Like it didn't involve the feud that was going on or the story. They would rush to a cage match. Maybe it was a story that was just a month long, but they were just doing it to have a pay-per-view match, and it was a bit of a throwaway. This was old school where it was just like, even though I really liked a lot of what we saw on Monday Night Raw last night, I was really looking forward to the cage match. I couldn't wait to see the cage match last night.
I don't remember a cage match that I'm probably going to remember like I'm going to remember the one from last night. And if there was one that happened in any company within the past 1, 3, 5, 10 years that I don't remember that actually did happen the way we're talking about from last night, I still don't remember it because it wasn't that memorable. Moments. How memorable are you? How memorable is the match? I will definitely be referencing Punk and Seth in the future when it comes to cage matches. I won't forget what I watched last night. Last night left a good, lasting impression on me because that's what I grew up on. And old school never dies. What we did 30 years ago, what they did 50 years ago, and what they will do 30 years from now and beyond, if they stick true to it, will always work. At the end of the day, the foundation of this business is psychology and storytelling and character development. If you have those things, if you have the four corners, you can go in there and do what you did last night and not need any outside help.
And when you look at some of the most memorable moments in a cage match, you know, the cage door when the Freebirds turned on Kerry Von Erich against Ric Flair, Jimmy Snuka jumping off the top of the cage against whether it was Bob Backlund and missing or Don Morocco and hitting it. And you're going to, like you said, you're going to remember last night that little story that Seth and Punk told before Roman came and when Roman came. That's going to be etched in your brain for decades and decades to come.
And I have no problem with the finish of that match because it made so much sense. Roman Reigns came back for his revenge on Seth Rollins, and he waited for a moment in time. I don't think that Roman Reigns wanted to help Seth Rollins win. He wanted to drag him out and reseat him for the curb stomps that happened a couple of months ago. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm getting this great match in a cage, men fighting, men wrestling, men exchanging their best of the best. And then all of a sudden, I got a non-finish. No problem, because the non-finish fit the story.